As years go, 2022 hasn't been all that bad. There have been some highs and admittedly some serious lows, but at least we've been able to go out into the world and share said highs and lows with other human beings. The world of video games has been much the same, and so we're here today to share with you the very best that 2022 has had to offer. Oh, and don't worry, we've also got the worst games of the year covered as well. Anyway, rules time. As is always the case, in order to qualify for a spot on one of these lists, a game has to have been released in the year in question in at least one territory, and must have received no fewer than 7 professional reviews. We take review scores from our chums over at Metacritic, and we don't include ports, re-releases, or collections unless they are significantly different enough from the original to warrant inclusion. Finally, everything on this list is correct at the time of writing in November 2022, and whilst we're good, we're not clairvoyant, so if anything has changed between then and whenever you're watching this video, for example if a fantastic new title gets released on New Year's Eve, we sincerely apologise. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are the 10 best games of 2022. Number 10. The Somnium Files, Nirvana Initiative, PC, 88%. Do you like murder? Then by golly are you going to love the 10th best game of 2022. Set in the Japanese city of Tokyo, The Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative tells the story of detectives Mizuki Date and Kuruto Ryuki as they investigate a series of grisly murders in which the victim is found with half of their body missing. Grim. In order to solve the case, they and their AI companions, Aiba and Tama, must enter the dreams of various suspects and gather information. Like its predecessor, The Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative, and it is pronounced I, not AI, weirdly, was very well received by critics. It can be difficult to nail mystery in a game, with many failing by leading players too much or not enough, but Nirvana Initiative has got it down, giving players enough information to piece things together without too much hand-holding. In addition to its compelling premise, Nirvana Initiative also tells an engaging story, introduces players to a plethora of intriguing characters, and tops it all off with excellent voice acting, fantastic visual design, and a good sense of humour. Oh, and don't worry if you haven't played the first The Somnium Files, as Nirvana Initiative stands perfectly well on its own 2 feet, a boast that none of its murder victims can make. You know, because they've all been cut in half? Sorry, I was wrong to think that joke had legs. Number 9. Immortality, Xbox Series X/S, 88%. Interactive movie games have historically been a bit hit and miss. Now don't get us wrong, there are some good ones out there, but the vast majority end up being a bit naff. It's probably for this reason we were surprised by Immortality, the brilliant interactive film created by Sam Barlow, who's probably best known for 2015's Her Story and 2019's Telling Lies. It's a little difficult to describe the plot without giving too much of it away, but it primarily focuses on actress Marissa Marcel, the 3 movies she's made throughout her career, not one of which was ever released, and her disappearance. The idea of the game is for players to review clips of Marcel's films, as well as behind-the-scenes footage, in order to piece together exactly what's happened to the actress. Most critics were floored by Immortality, with several giving the game a perfect score due to its outstanding narrative and the acting performances of its cast. However, as Dalton Cooper of Game Rant pointed out, Immortality is not a game for everyone. If you like artsy films and are patient enough to sift through hundreds of video clips, you'll have a blast. Otherwise, your experience with Immortality may be somewhat short-lived. Number 8. I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, PC, 89%. If you're anything like me, you probably spent your teenage years indoors playing video games and chatting to your friends on MSN. Showing my age a bit there. If I'd lived in the world of I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, however, well, I'd probably still have done those things, just in space. In this charming narrative adventure, players take on the role of a 10-year-old who's just arrived on their new planet, having been aboard the first ship to ever pass through a wormhole at the edge of Earth's solar system. Gameplay-wise, players should expect lots of decision-making, a time travel mechanic that allows them to remember events from previous playthroughs, yes, multiple playthroughs are necessary, and a card battle system that gets used for all manner of pursuits, be it performing a magic show or fighting aliens. Of the 10 publications that reviewed I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, not one of them gave the game less than 85 out of 100, with each citing the gripping story, whimsical and interesting characters, and the game's willingness to tackle sensitive topics as reasons that players need to get their hands on a copy. Number 7. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Switch, 89%. We come now to the one and only Switch title on today's list, and good grief, is it a belter. The Xeno franchise has been around since 1998, with the first Xenoblade Chronicles being released in 2010. However, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is not, as the title may suggest, the third of the Xenoblade Chronicles games, but is in fact the fourth. Since Xenoblade Chronicles X is a spiritual successor to Xenoblade Chronicles 1 though, rather than a sequel, 3 is still the third title in the Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy, concluding the overarching narrative. Everyone nice and clear on all of that now? No, me neither. The game takes place in Ionios, where two nations, Keves and Agnes, remain perpetually at war. The story focuses on Noah, Lance, and Uni from Keves, and Mio, Tyon, and Senna from Agnes. The six all gain a mysterious power and decide to unite in order to find safety, all whilst uncovering the mysteries behind the ongoing war. Although Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did suffer from some technical issues, this wasn't enough to put players and critics off, and several reviewers lavished the game with praise for everything from its story and characters to its gameplay, graphics, and sheer scale. Number 6. Norco, PC, 89%. Get those index fingers at the ready, kids, because we've got some pointing and or clicking fun for you now. Released for PC in March 2022 and set to make its way to consoles at some point, Norco is a point-and-click adventure developed by Geography of Robots and published by Raw Fury. The story centers on Kay, a woman who returns to the town of Norco, Louisiana, following her mother's death. Her brother has gone missing, and her only hope of finding him is a fugitive security android. In the grand tradition of point-and-click titles of years past, the actual gameplay boils down to puzzle solving and the odd QTE here and there, and all of it is very competently executed. The puzzles are simple but satisfying, and the QTEs are technically proficient and not overused. Where Norco really shines, though, is its story and cast of intriguing characters, and it was these elements of the game that critics spotlighted, along with its gorgeous pixel art visuals that conveyed both the beauty and the grotesqueness of the game's world. Put simply, if you enjoyed the likes of Disco Elysium and Kentucky Route Zero, then you're going to have a wonderful time with Norco. Number 5. Neon White, PC, 90%. Sometimes it pays to take things a little more slowly when playing a video game. You might notice something you'd previously overlooked, or just get the chance to enjoy the little things that you usually do on autopilot. Then there are other times, like when playing Neon White, when time really is of the essence. Developed by Angel Matrix and published by Annapurna Interactive, Neon White is a first-person shooter where the aim is to clear all of the demons out of each level in as short of a time as possible. As players explore each level and defeat the infernal beasts within, they'll gather cards, each of which represent different weapons that can be used to defeat their adversaries. Upon its release, Neon White was a critical success. In particular, reviewers praised its anime-inspired aesthetic, the performances of the voice actors, and the game's exciting, fast-paced gameplay and speedrun-centric core mechanic. At the time of writing, Neon White is nominated for a total of 6 different awards, including the TGA for Best Independent Game and the Golden Joystick for Ultimate Game of the Year. And if it doesn't end up winning multiple accolades, we will be most surprised. Number 4. Rogue Legacy 2, Xbox Series X/S, 90%. Although Rogue Legacy 2, the follow-up to 2013's Rogue Legacy, was originally released in early access in 2020, and it was only in April of 2022 that it finally got its long-awaited full release. And goodness me, is it a banger of a game. This platformer draws heavily from both the roguelike and Metroidvania genres, and puts players into the shoes of a knight who must explore procedurally generated dungeons, collect treasure, and fight monsties. If killed, the player must start over again with a random character whose traits may help or hinder them in combat. Thankfully, players can also attain permanent upgrades along the way, so although your new character might not be completely to your taste, at least they won't be entirely useless. Most critics agreed that Rogue Legacy 2 does exactly what all good sequels should do. It takes everything that its predecessor did well and builds upon it with loads more content, refined gameplay, and more character customization options than you can shake a stick at. Some did complain that it felt a little repetitive at times, but we can't help but feel like the handful of critics who did bemoan this have somewhat missed the entire point of the roguelike genre. Number 3. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, Xbox Series X/S, 93%. Now I know what you're gonna say, but Peter, I thought you didn't include re-releases in these best of lists. Well, it's true, usually we don't, but the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe gets a pass because it adds a whole load of extra stuff that wasn't in the original The Stanley Parable. The game tells the story of Stanley, a man who works in an office monitoring data on a screen and pushing buttons. When the screen goes blank one day, Stanley isn't sure what to do, and upon exploring the building, he finds his workplace to be entirely abandoned. Over the course of the game, players are given multiple choices and can choose to obey the narrator or not. Ultra Deluxe expands upon the original game by adding new endings, environments, and choices, as well as implementing a number of accessibility features. The reimagining received a great deal of love from critics, many of whom praised it not only for retaining the humour of the original, but for building upon it with the added content. Whether you've played the Stanley Parable or not, Ultra Deluxe is a must-play for anyone who's wondered what would happen if they could defy a video game. Number 2. God of War Ragnarok, PS5, 94%. When it was released in 2018, God of War was a smash hit, and gamers were eager to find out what other shenanigans Kratos and his son Atreus would get up to. Well, it took 4 years for Santa Monica Studio and Sony Interactive Entertainment to release a follow-up, but I think most players will agree that God of War Ragnarok was worth waiting for. Like its predecessor, Ragnarok is loosely based on Norse mythology, as opposed to the ancient Greek setting of the series' earlier releases. Players join Kratos and Atreus once more, only this time the pair must face Ragnarok, the apocalyptic event foretold when Kratos killed Baldur in God of War. In addition to mountains of praise from critics, which covers everything from the game's exciting gameplay to its engaging story, God of War Ragnarok has amassed several awards already, and no less than 10 TGA nominations, including the prestigious Game of the Year accolade. With its exceptional storytelling, stunning visuals, compelling characters, and exciting level design, God of War Ragnarok is a triumph of a game and a fitting conclusion to the series' Norse era. It does make you wonder where in history Kratos will show up next, though. I hear the ancient Egyptians had plenty of gods, and I'm sure he'll have lots of fun making friends with them. He wouldn't make friends with anyone, would he? And number 1, Elden Ring, Xbox Series X, 96%. Ever since it was revealed in 2019, expectations for Elden Ring have been fairly lofty. After all, each of its predecessors have been brilliant, so why would Elden Ring be any different? Thankfully, the game was not only as good as the likes of Dark Souls and Bloodborne, it was arguably better. Elden Ring is set in the Lands Between, which is ruled over by a number of demigods. Prior to the events of the game, the titular Elden Ring was shattered by Queen Marika, and her children subsequently went to war over the pieces. As the Tarnished, it's up to the player to repair the Elden Ring and take their place as the Elden Lord. Elden Ring released in February 2022 to universal critical acclaim, earning itself perfect review scores from dozens of publications. The open world is stunning and provides players with hours upon hours of exploration. The story is intriguing, though as with previous From Software titles, players do need to go looking for it, and the gameplay is challenging, yet more accessible than other Souls-born games. Even our writer managed to beat some enemies, and she's rubbish. So congratulations, Elden Ring, for being the very best game of 2022, according to critical reviews. 2023's offerings have some very large shoes to fill.